I used to confess my feelings to my crush all the time, thinking he couldn't hear me. Today, after learning a few sassy lines, I was ready to go all out. Hey, big guy, I was just thinking, wanna hop on a rocking horse with me? The guy, who usually didn't react, suddenly scooped me up. His voice was husky. Sure. That guy by the window is so hot. Yeah, but he's so cold. He never talks to anyone. The guy with sharp, clear eyes sat by the window, his slender, pale fingers slowly turning the pages of a book. Countless girls had already fallen for his good looks, trying to get his contact info, only to be silently rejected. But would a small setback like that deter a genius like me when it came to dating? I swaggered over, book in hand, and sat right next to him, trying to strike up a conversation. Hey, what year are you? And what's your major? He didn't answer, just tilted his head, avoiding the sunlight streaming through the window. His perfect profile looked even more aloof, like a painting. While drooling over him, I suddenly had an epiphany. No wonder so many people talk to you, and you don't answer. You're deaf. The hand holding his pen tightened slightly, then quickly relaxed. He just quietly moved his chair further away from me. Of course, I didn't think he was annoyed. Based on my decade-plus history of reading web novels in elementary school, this classic, gorgeous, brilliant, and tragic type, the kind who's got it all but is always suffering, usually gets weird looks from people. So when I tried to be nice, he must have felt uncomfortable and instinctively moved away.
Poor little thing.
Channeling my inner simp, I scooted even closer to him. Our breaths mingled softly. I pretended not to notice his ears faintly reddening, and instead pressed down on his notebook, slowly enunciating his name. Julian Hayes. Then I turned my head, looked him straight in the eyes, and smiled sweetly. Your name sounds so good. Julian Hayes' amber eyes reflected my image. As if enused to such closeness, he sharply recoiled, gathering his things and getting up to leave. He looked like he was fleeing for his life, as if from a monster.
But that's okay.
He hadn't rejected me outright, so it probably meant he didn't dislike me. Tomorrow, I'll come back to harass. Care for him. Hee. The next day, same time, same place. Julian Hayes showed up promptly, at his usual spot. But this time, he didn't sit down immediately. He looked around, as if searching for something. Only after confirming that the seat I'd occupied yesterday was empty did he slowly relax, pull out the chair, and sit down. Bright sunlight streamed through the window, highlighting his white shirt and outlining his lean, strong waist. Julian Hayes bowed his head, earnestly flipping through his book, the scene looking peaceful and beautiful. I quietly admired him for a while before emerging from behind the bookshelf with a thick stack of textbooks. Ignoring his saw a ghost expression, I sat down next to him. Were you waiting for me? Julian Hayes didn't speak, just averted his gaze. His pale pink lips were pressed into a thin line, a silent rejection. But I've always been shameless, so I just pretended not to notice. Julian Hayes, I don't understand these few problems. Can you teach me? His books on the desk were covered by my textbooks. Julian Hayes turned his head, silently staring at me. I slapped my forehead, realizing he couldn't hear. My bad. I completely forgot you can't hear. As soon as the words left my mouth, before Julian Hayes could react, I suddenly took his long, pale hand gently. I slowly traced out words on his warm palm. Teach me. The touch of our skin was incredibly clear. My sudden action made Julian Hayes stiffen. When he came back to his senses, his first instinct was to pull his hand away. My fingertips slid lightly along his palm, but just as he was about to fully withdraw, I suddenly grabbed his fingers tightly. As I held his hand firmly, I deliberately looked into Julian Hayes' eyes. I slowed my words, mouthing to him. Hey, you haven't agreed to teach me yet. Julian Hayes' ears were so red they looked like they could bleed, and his gaze visibly flitted around in panic. After a long moment, he pulled out a pen, put it in my hand, and gestured for me to write on a notebook. His eyes, so close, watched me intently, as if silently pleading. I blinked, suddenly feeling guilty for bullying the poor guy. Since my trick had worked, I released his hand. Thank you. The distance between us returned to normal. Julian Hayes subtly let out a breath, took the notebook that was in front of me, and wrote neatly. Which one don't you understand? His handwriting, like him, was elegant and beautiful. Julian Hayes finished writing and pushed the notebook back to me, looking earnestly at me, waiting for my answer, incredibly well-behaved and serious. But to his surprise, I directly rested my arm on his and used his notebook to reply. All of them. Our breaths once again drew infinitely close. The sweet scent of my shower gel and Julian Hayes' cool, pleasant scent slowly mingled. His pupils trembled, boundless emotion flickering, which instantly turned into deep exasperation when he saw my answer. His slender fingers delicately hooked my sleeve, pulling me back as I tried to escape. Julian Hayes used his elegant handwriting to write over my words. "I'll wait for you at the library at this time, every day from now on." And just like that, I gained a free private tutor, and a very dedicated one at that. When Julian Hayes said he'd teach me problems, he taught me problems. He didn't do anything extra. After our fixed study time each day, he'd go about his own business. But I couldn't bear to leave after such a short time, so I'd just stick around, reading and reviewing, occasionally chatting with him by writing notes. All my unspoken thoughts finally found a home. Julian Hayes was like my personal trash can, and one with top-notch confidentiality. Though he rarely paid attention to me, and his replies were few, his notebook gradually became filled with my handwriting. As time passed, I started wanting to tease Julian Hayes again. While he was reading, I'd slowly write on the notebook. "Even if you can't hear me, it's okay. Being deaf isn't your fault. You have me. I'm willing to be your ears for life." Julian Hayes glanced at me, then lowered his head to continue reading. But his handsome face was clearly flushed. His reaction was so cute that I buried my face on the desk, giggling for a long time before stopping. From that day on, I started paying attention to Julian Hayes outside the library. His daily routine was simple: classes, library, eating, sleeping. So I easily figured out his movements. After staking him out for a few days, I found that he didn't seem to have many friends. He was always alone, even when he went to eat. He felt even more pitiful. So I deliberately went to the cafeteria to accidentally run into him. Ignoring the surprised looks from passers-by, I carried my tray and sat across from Julian Hayes, giving him a bright smile. What a coincidence. Julian Hayes glanced at me, then acted like he hadn't seen me, lowering his head to quietly eat his meal. Even though he didn't acknowledge me, he clearly didn't reject me either. How does that saying go? Silence is the best permission. The cafeteria food was just okay, barely edible. But to test Julian Hayes' limits, I deliberately picked a piece of sweet and sour pork from his tray and popped it into my mouth. Then I narrowed my eyes in a smile, praising it without reservation. So good. Julian Hayes' chewing paused. He was clearly startled by my outrageous behavior. He covered his mouth, coughing for a good while, unable to stop. I smoothly handed him a bottle of water, silently wondering, is he going to hate me now? Is he finally fed up with my harassment and about to publicly reject me? I waited for a full 30 seconds before Julian Hayes finally put down the water bottle. Then he picked up his forks and continued eating. At the same time, he silently pushed the side of his plate with the sweet and sour pork towards me. At that moment, my heart started pounding uncontrollably. I already knew Julian Hayes was a good student. Now his charm level just shot through the roof. I'm never one to be shy. Since my heart was racing, I decided to go for it. Julian Hayes paused his eating, looking down at my foot lightly kicking his shin. Then he opened the notes app on his phone, typed a line, and showed it to me. "What's up?" I didn't take his phone, but deliberately looked into his eyes and said, "Wanna add me on Snapchat?" Even though I wanted to flirt with him, I didn't have high hopes. After all, Julian Hayes was known as the hardest guy to get in school. But to my surprise, the moment he clearly understood my lip movements, he nodded in agreement. Then he switched to the scan interface, silently urging me with his eyes. I opened my mouth, swallowing the words I'd planned to say to save face. Just like that, I confusingly added Julian Hayes on Snapchat. Back in my dorm, my roommate looked at my dazed expression and asked, confused, "You've been running out all the time for days, and then you come back smiling like you just won the lottery. Spill it. Did some hot guy steal your soul?" That girl, she guessed pretty accurately. I looked at her with admiration and sincerely asked, "Babe, can you teach me how to date?" Although I usually called myself a dating expert, I'd never actually been in a relationship. I was a blank slate in that department. I was so afraid of doing something wrong and scaring off the hot guy I was about to get. My roommate was so shocked, she almost fell off her bed. While imparting her wisdom, she also pressed, "Which guy in school is so charming that he managed to capture the heart of our department's beauty queen?" I feigned modesty and waved my hand. "It's my crush, and it's still early days. I'll definitely tell you the moment I officially get him." I'd heard my roommate's gossip about Julian Hayes before. They said he was nicknamed Ice Prince and rarely spoke to anyone. If I told them I had a crush on Julian Hayes, they definitely wouldn't believe me. It was better to wait until we were officially together before sharing the good news. Speaking of which, Julian Hayes was quite pitiful. He was deaf and couldn't hear, so of course he couldn't talk to people. The poor guy was already struggling. How could people misunderstand him? To comfort Julian Hayes, the first thing I did after getting into bed was to send him a Snapchat message. Hey, quick question. What time is it? I don't mean anything else. Just reminding you it's time for us to be together. A little cat goes, meow, meow, meow. A little dog goes, Julian Hayes, I'm your dog. I'm only loyal to you for life. Julian Hayes replied quickly, almost instantly. But no matter what I sent, he only replied with 6 dots. I stared at the chat box, brewing for a long time, deeply understanding my shortcomings. It seemed that flirting online was really not my strong suit. After all, with a screen between us, Julian Hayes couldn't fully feel my overflowing emotions. So I decided to change tactics and ask him to meet offline. I heard amusement parks are the best date spots for couples. And tomorrow's my birthday, so how about it, want to go together? Julian Hayes still replied quickly. Okay. If I hadn't been sharp-eyed, I would have almost missed his reply. I didn't expect Julian Hayes to be so easy to ask out. I was so happy. I wanted to run laps for the entire dorm, or maybe even the whole campus, just to burn off all that excitement. My roommates, hearing that I was going on a date with my crush tomorrow, happily started scheming for me. Remember to bring your ID and charger. I'll send you the link to that super nice hotel near the amusement park. This lingerie set is so innocent sexy. Wear this tomorrow and I guarantee you'll hit a home run.
Huh?
Was this really something I should be hearing at my age? My face burned red, and my mind raced with all sorts of dirty thoughts as I spent a night filled with sweet anticipation. By the time my roommates had picked out my outfit and done my makeup, Julian Hayes was already waiting outside when I went downstairs. The amusement park smelled of sugar and excitement, the kind of place where laughter bounced off every corner. I tugged Julian by the sleeve as we walked past the entrance. His steps were careful, precise, and unusually stiff, like a cat being dragged into a bathtub. You're nervous, aren't you? I teased, grinning. He glanced at me, amber eyes flickering with something. I couldn't tell if it was panic or mild annoyance. He scribbled quickly on his notebook and held it up. Not nervous. Just cautious. I laughed. Cautious, huh? That's a nice way of saying you've never been on a roller coaster in your life. He froze, then slowly scribbled back. Do not call me names. Oh, come on, Ice Prince, I said, pointing at him dramatically. The Ice Prince who's never touched a roller coaster. Look at you, so perfect and pale, and yet terrified of cotton candy rides. Julian rolled his eyes, but the corner of his mouth twitched.
Victory.
Our first stop was the Ferris wheel. As we climbed into the carriage, I noticed him gripping the safety bar like it was the edge of a cliff. I reached for his hand, brushing my fingers over his, just to see if he would flinch. He froze. His amber eyes widened slightly, but he didn't pull away. See? I whispered teasingly, leaning closer. It's just a Ferris wheel, not a free fall into a volcano. He scribbled on a small piece of paper, showing it to me. I know. I poked his arm playfully. Then why the death grip? He looked away, scribbled furiously again, and handed me the note. Because you're next to me. My heart skipped. He didn't say it out loud, but his handwriting, it trembled slightly. And that mattered more than any words he could have said. When the ride started moving, I couldn't resist leaning over to point at the view. Look at this. Isn't it amazing? He followed my gesture, then scribbled, showing it to me. You are amazing. I nearly dropped my own notebook from shock. You're supposed to be the Ice Prince. Stop being unexpectedly cute. He glared, or at least attempted to, though it came out more like a serious squint. I couldn't stop grinning. As the Ferris wheel carried us higher, the world below faded into blur, leaving just him and me in our little bubble. I inched closer, brushing my shoulder against his. His hand twitched again, but when I gently took it in mine, he didn't pull away. Instead, he scribbled on the notebook in a careful, precise script. Do not make me like you more. Oh, too late, I whispered, pressing our fingers together. You've been caught. He looked at me, cheeks faintly pink, eyes darting down. I leaned back slightly, enjoying the way he seemed both annoyed and intrigued. When the ride ended, he let me lead him to the next attraction, still holding my hand. It was slightly awkward, slightly tense, but also perfectly perfect. The ice prince was slowly melting, and I was having the time of my life. After our first roller coaster date, I made it my mission to uncover the secret corners of Julian Hayes' world. He was the ultimate mystery, quiet, precise, and impossibly private, but I was persistent. It started with small victories. One afternoon, I accidentally ran into him at the campus greenhouse, a place no one really went to. He was sitting on a bench surrounded by hanging plants. "Hey, big guy," I said, plopping down beside him. "This your secret hideout?" Ice Prince getting in touch with plants. He froze for a moment, then scribbled. "Not a hideout. Just peaceful." I poked a leaf dangling near him. "Peaceful, huh? And here I thought you only had a love affair with your textbooks." He shot me a glare, or at least the closest thing to a glare a silent genius could manage. I grinned. "Come on, tell me one secret about yourself." "One." Julian paused, then slowly wrote. "I like classical music. Chopin. Alone." "Alone?" I repeated, feigning shock. "So you're a secret pianist by night? Or just the type who hums Chopin while plotting to freeze the world with your icy glare?" He scribbled back quickly. "Neither. I just like quiet." I leaned closer, brushing my fingers over his notebook. "Quiet's boring. You need someone to tease you, maybe annoy you a little." His amber eyes flicked toward mine, and for a split second, I saw something soft. Something not quite hidden. My heart skipped. But of course, our perfect little moment couldn't last. A loud laugh echoed from the greenhouse entrance. One of the nosy students in our department, Lila, stood there, staring at us like we'd committed a crime. Well, Julian Hayes," she said, smirking. "Never thought I'd see you giggling with someone. Who's this?" Julian stiffened instantly, glancing at me for help. I shrugged, smiling innocently. "Just me, your friendly neighborhood troublemaker." Lila's eyes narrowed. "Aha. Looks like he's finally talking to someone. Or is it just special treatment?" Julian scribbled furiously. "Ignore her." I smiled wickedly. "Ignore her? That's no fun. She's clearly jealous of my amazing skills at charming geniuses." Lila's expression darkened, but before she could reply, Julian handed me his notebook. On it, he had written carefully, "Do not encourage her." I laughed softly, leaning closer. "Oh, I'm encouraged. Very encouraged." After she left, I nudged him lightly. "See? Even the gossipers notice our chemistry." He scribbled. "It's complicated." I traced the words with my finger. "Everything good that's worth having is complicated." He looked at me, amber eyes lingering on my face a moment longer than usual. Then he wrote something else. "You're persistent. Guilty as charged," I whispered, brushing my thumb over his hand. "And you're starting to like it, admit it." Julian's hand twitched slightly, almost like a silent surrender. I knew he wouldn't say it aloud, but actions spoke louder than words. And right now, his subtle gestures were screaming. As I left the greenhouse, I couldn't help but grin. Julian Hayes had secrets, I had questions, and together, we were dangerously unstoppable. It was a sunny afternoon, and Julian and I were sitting under our usual oak tree near the library, reviewing our notes. I had my head bent over my notebook, scribbling furiously, while he sat opposite me, cool and composed, his amber eyes focused on his own pages. Then she appeared. A confident, extroverted girl from our department, Samantha, walked up with that infuriatingly perfect smile. Her heels clicked against the pavement as if announcing she owned the campus. She waved at Julian like they were longtime friends. "Hey, Julian. Didn't expect to see you here all alone," she said, voice sugary and loud enough for me to feel my pulse spike. Julian's hand froze mid-scribble. He glanced at her, then at me, as if silently begging for backup. I narrowed my eyes. I stood and sauntered closer, pretending casual innocence. "Oh, hey Sam. Fancy meeting you here," I said, voice bright, the kind that sounded like sunshine but carried a hint of warning. Samantha tilted her head, smirking. "So, who's your friend, Julian?" I didn't know he had visitors. Julian scribbled quickly on his notebook. "Friend. Ignore her." I raised an eyebrow, crouching slightly to read. Then I scribbled back on a scrap of paper and held it up. "My friend? Sure, but I'm the one he actually talks to." Samantha's smile faltered for a moment, but she recovered with a laugh. "Oh, is that so?" Well, I'm sure I could teach him a few things you can't. I felt my cheeks heat, but I refused to let her intimidate me. I wrote back, smirking. Good luck. Ice Prince already prefers chaos. Julian's eyes flicked between us, and I noticed a subtle tension in his posture. He wasn't speaking, but the tight grip on his notebook, the slight stiffening of his shoulders, it all said more than words ever could. Samantha leaned closer, brushing against his shoulder. You don't say much, but I bet you have a wild side. Don't you? I felt protective, a new, unfamiliar flutter rising in my chest. I scribbled furiously. Back off. Hands off my tutor. Julian glanced at my note and almost smiled, just a tiny, fleeting curve of his lips. But then he turned back to his own notebook. She huffed, clearly irritated by my boldness. Well, I guess I'll leave you two alone for now. After she walked away, I sat back down beside Julian. You okay? I whispered, lightly brushing his arm. He scribbled slowly. You or protective. I grinned, leaning closer. Of course I'm protective. You're mine in a way. Julian's amber eyes softened, lingering on mine longer than usual. I felt my heart skip. It was strange, the teasing, the playful chaos. It wasn't just fun anymore. My chest tightened, and I realized something important. I genuinely cared for him. He scribbled one more note, almost shyly. I'll like it. I laughed softly, my hand brushing his in a quick, fleeting touch. Good. Then stay close. I'm not letting anyone scare you away. Julian looked at me, his expression unreadable, yet I could feel the warmth in his gaze. For the first time, I understood that this game we were playing wasn't just about teasing or flirting, it was about something real. Something worth protecting. And I wasn't going to let anyone come between us, not even the boldest, most confident rival on campus. The campus was quiet that night, the kind of silence that made every footstep sound loud. Julian and I found ourselves on our usual bench near the library, tucked beneath a street lamp that cast a soft glow around us. The world had faded, leaving just the two of us. He sat a little stiffly, hands folded over his notebook. I could tell he was holding something back, something heavier than the playful teasing we usually shared. You've been quieter than usual tonight, I whispered, nudging him lightly. Julian hesitated, fingers drumming nervously on the notebook. Then, slowly, he scribbled. It's hard. People don't understand. I frowned, my heart tightening. Understand what? I asked softly. He bit his lip and wrote another note. Being deaf, it's complicated. People stare. People assume I'm strange. I reached over, gently taking his hand in mine. The warmth of his palm surprised me, fragile yet strong. Hey, I whispered, leaning slightly on his shoulder. You don't need to change for anyone. I like you just the way you are. His amber eyes flicked toward me, shimmering in the lamplight. He scribbled slowly, carefully. You really mean that? Of course I do, I said, squeezing his hand. You're Julian Hayes. Brilliant, mysterious, and a little stubborn. But that's why I like you. That's why I want to be around you. He looked down at his notebook, fingers trembling slightly as he wrote. Most people don't see me like that. Then let me, I whispered, brushing my thumb over his knuckles. I see you. All of you. And I like all of it. For a long moment, he said nothing, just let our hands rest together. Then he slowly leaned his head on my shoulder, hesitant but seeking comfort. My heart raced. I wrapped an arm around him gently, careful not to rush anything. He scribbled one more note, almost a whisper. I trust you. I smiled softly, resting my forehead lightly against his temple. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. The night wrapped around us, the world outside fading further with each passing second. For the first time, Julian wasn't just the aloof, icy genius everyone whispered about. He was vulnerable, human, and right there with me. And I had never felt closer to anyone. The campus festival was alive with lights, music, and laughter. Booths lined the walkway, their colorful banners flapping in the evening breeze. I tugged Julian along, determined to make this the most memorable date yet. Come on, Ice Prince, I teased, grinning. You can't hide behind your books forever. Live a little. Julian glanced at me, amber eyes wary. He scribbled quickly on a small napkin. I am living. Quietly. I snorted. Quietly? That's not living. That's surviving. We stopped at a booth selling candied apples. I picked the shiniest one, then handed it to him with a playful bow. For you, Sir Julian. A gift for being my personal genius. He blinked, then carefully took it, holding it like it might explode. I grinned, nudging him lightly. Don't worry, it's harmless mostly. Later, we wandered to the small Ferris we'll set up just for the festival. My heart raced as I helped him climb into the carriage. I couldn't resist leaning closer, letting my fingers brush against his. His hand twitched, then rested in mine.
Victory.
As the ride creaked upward, I decided it was the perfect moment. Julian, I whispered softly, leaning just a little closer. I've been wanting to do this. He froze, amber eyes wide. I leaned in anyway, aiming for the kiss, but misjudged the angle. Our noses bumped first, and he recoiled slightly, hands flailing like a startled cat. I stumbled too, and the carriage rocked, making the moment even more comical. I laughed, scribbling on his palm with my finger. You're so difficult. He blinked, then slowly, hesitantly, leaned closer again. This time, our lips met in a gentle, awkward, yet undeniably sweet kiss. He pulled back slightly, eyes wide, and then murmured, or rather, scribbled frantically. I did not expect that. I giggled, brushing a strand of hair from his face. Neither did I. But it was worth it, right? He glanced at me, amber eyes softened with something shy and unspoken, and nodded. Then he scribbled one final note. It was perfect. My heart soared. Despite the mishaps, the awkward bumps, and his frozen expressions, our first kiss had finally happened. And somehow it was more magical than I could have imagined. The Ferris wheel continued its slow rotation, but I barely noticed the lights or the music. All I could focus on was Julian Hayes, messy, stubborn, adorable, and entirely mine. It was mid-afternoon, and Julian and I were sprawled on the campus lawn, reviewing notes for our upcoming exams. The sun was warm, the breeze soft, and for a moment, it felt like the world had shrunk down to just the two of us. Then I noticed something, a folded piece of paper sticking out of Julian's backpack. Curious, I tugged it out discreetly. My heart skipped. It looked like a note from someone else, someone he had smiled at briefly in the cafeteria the day before. I scribbled quickly on my own notebook, holding it up with a teasing grin. Who's this? Trying to replace me, Ice Prince? Julian's amber eyes flicked up, and I caught the tiniest flicker of panic. He scribbled back, handwriting slightly uneven. Not what you think. I leaned closer, narrowing my eyes. Oh, really? Because it looks suspiciously flirty. He sighed, exasperated, then carefully wrote again. It's nothing. Just a classmate. I pouted playfully, holding his notebook between us. A classmate, huh? One who sends secret notes and makes you smile like that. Julian's hand brushed mine as he reached to take back his notebook. Our fingers touched, lingering longer than necessary. He didn't pull away, but his amber eyes betrayed a hint of guilt. I grinned wickedly, scribbling. You're so difficult when I'm jealous. He quickly wrote. You're persistent. Guilty. I whispered, leaning in slightly. And you like it? He paused, then carefully wrote. Sometimes. I chuckled, nudging his shoulder with mine. Sometimes? That's it? I demand more honesty, Ice Prince. Julian's cheeks tinted faintly pink, and he avoided my gaze. But when I pretended to reach for the note in his hand, he subtly moved closer, letting me brush against him. It was a small, deliberate gesture, but I caught it instantly. I scribbled back. So you do care. He hesitated, then wrote slowly. I do. I smiled triumphantly, resting my head lightly against his arm. Good. Because I like caring for you too. The afternoon drifted by with playful notes, teasing glances, and small, protective touches. Each scribble became its own little game, a test of patience, wit, and closeness. Every accidental brush of fingers, every subtle lean toward me, every glance over the top of his notebook, it all spoke louder than words ever could. By the time we packed up to leave, I felt it clearly. Our teasing and minor misunderstandings weren't just for fun anymore. They were building something deeper, something neither of us had to say aloud to understand. And somehow, knowing I could rattle the Ice Prince and still have him choose me, made my chest tighten in the best possible way. The campus was bathed in soft moonlight, empty paths glowing under the lampposts. Julian and I found ourselves at our favorite quiet bench near the library, the one where we had shared countless notes, laughter, and stolen glances. Tonight, though, the air felt heavier, charged with something neither of us had dared to say. I fiddled with my notebook nervously, then finally scribbled a line and held it up for him. I have to tell you something for real this time. Julian's amber eyes met mine, steady but slightly tense. He didn't speak, didn't write. He just waited. That alone told me he was ready to listen. I took a deep breath, letting the vulnerability seep into my words as I scribbled quickly. I like you. Not joking.
Not teasing.
I like you a lot. For a long moment, Julian didn't move.
My heart hammered in my chest.
Did I scare him? Did I misread everything? Then, slowly, he reached for his notebook, writing carefully, deliberately. I like you. My chest tightened, and a wave of relief, joy, and disbelief washed over me. I couldn't help the tears that threatened, or the laugh that bubbled out uncontrollably. Scribbling back, I held the note up for him. Finally, you let me in. Julian's lips curved into the faintest, shyest smile I had ever seen. His hand brushed mine gently, lingering longer than usual. Then, as if the words were too much, too strange to speak aloud, he whispered, barely above the wind. I like you too. My heart exploded. I leaned closer, resting my forehead against his shoulder. You don't know how long I've waited to hear that. Just as the moment stretched into perfect silence, a sudden shout broke through the night. A campus security guard rounded the corner, flashlight cutting through the darkness. Hey, what are you two doing out here, so late? Campus closing. Julian and I jumped, hearts racing, and without thinking, I grabbed his hand. He looked at me, startled, but didn't hesitate. We sprinted down the path, weaving through the trees and laughing breathlessly, our hands tightly intertwined. We finally collapsed behind a low hedge, panting, flushed, and laughing like idiots. Julian's amber eyes met mine, soft and warm, and for a moment, the world outside didn't exist. You really like me? He whispered, still catching his breath. I grinned, pressing my hand over his.
Yes.
And you like me. So we're even. He nodded slowly, then rested his forehead against mine. The connection between us, unspoken, delicate, and finally mutual, felt like the start of something unbreakable. And in that stolen moment, under the moonlight and behind the hedge, I knew we weren't just teasing, not just flirting. We had finally crossed the line into something real. It started innocently enough. Julian and I were sitting in the cafeteria, sharing fries and scribbling notes to each other while the room buzzed with students. Then I noticed it, whispers, stares, and pointed fingers. Look at those two, someone murmured behind us. Finally caught the Ice Prince's attention. I shot them a playful grin, holding up my notebook. Hey, we're working here. Mind your business. Julian glanced at me, amber eyes flickering with a mix of embarrassment and amusement. His hand twitched as if he wanted to hide his face behind his notebook. Oh no, Ice Prince, I teased, nudging his arm. You're blushing. Publicly. He scribbled quickly. Stop. I laughed, holding his hand briefly to reassure him. Relax. People are just curious. Let me handle this. A group of classmates approached, smirking. So, you two are actually together? One asked, trying to sound casual. I leaned forward, notebook open, pen poised.
Yes.
And if you have questions, ask them politely. Julian here isn't a vending machine for gossip. Julian peeked at me, his lips twitching as if fighting a smile. He scribbled. You're bold. I shrugged, grinning. And you like it? The classmates blinked, taken aback by my confidence. One of them leaned closer. So, what's it like being with the Ice Prince? He's so cold, so mysterious. I wrote back quickly on a scrap of paper and held it up. Cold?
He's warm.
And he's mine. Julian's hand brushed mine under the table, a subtle squeeze. I caught the gesture and grinned.
See?
Even he agrees with me. One of the students snorted, but before they could say more, Julian scribbled something and showed me. Ignore them. I winked at him. Don't worry, Ice Prince. I've got this. The rest of the lunch passed with whispered remarks, sideways glances, and the occasional playful smile from Julian. By the time we left the cafeteria, I knew something had shifted. People had noticed us, yes, but more importantly, Julian hadn't pulled away. He hadn't let anyone make him retreat. Later, as we walked across campus, he leaned slightly closer, brushing his shoulder against mine. I felt his warmth, subtle but deliberate. I scribbled. You okay with all the attention? He wrote back slowly, carefully. I'm okay. With you. My heart skipped. Good, I whispered. Because we're in this together. Always. And just like that, the Ice Prince and his relentless, teasing partner became a little more visible in the world. People could watch, gossip, whisper, but our bond was something no one could touch. The library was quieter than usual, sunlight streaming through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes floating lazily in the air. Julian and I were curled up in a secluded corner, our textbooks and notebooks spread across the table like a small fortress of shared chaos. Okay, Ice Prince, I teased, nudging him lightly with my elbow. You're explaining quantum mechanics to me again. But this time try to make it sound fun. He shot me a look over the rim of his notebook, amber eyes catching the light. Then, with a faint smirk, he scribbled. Fun is subjective. I leaned closer, brushing a stray strand of hair from his forehead. Then make me your measure of fun. His pencil paused mid-scribble, and for a second, he didn't respond. Then he slowly wrote, I'll try. The corners of my mouth lifted. That's all I ask. Hours passed with whispered jokes, scribbled notes, and shared laughter. Every time I accidentally brushed against his arm or dropped my pencil near his hand, our fingers would touch, lingering just a little too long. Each contact sent a small, delicious shiver up my spine. Julian never pulled away. He adjusted, subtly, letting our closeness grow. After a particularly tricky problem, I leaned back, sighing dramatically. I need a reward. Ice Prince, what do I get for surviving your endless math explanations? He scribbled thoughtfully, then held up a note. A smile from you. I laughed, leaning closer and letting him see it in real time. Then I guess you're doing a good job. Later, we decided to take a break and watch a movie on my laptop. Julian sprawled on the couch, headphones in place, but I snuck my hand to rest lightly on his arm. He glanced at me, amber eyes soft, and let me stay. My heart thudded with every small gesture. These moments, quiet and unremarkable to anyone else, felt monumental. I teased him, whispering, You're not so bad at this whole cuddling thing, you know. For an Ice Prince. He scribbled with a faint blush. You're persistent. Guilty, I said, leaning my head against his shoulder. But persistent leads to happiness. So technically, I'm helping you. He didn't respond with words, just adjusted slightly, so I could rest more comfortably. That was enough. His quiet acceptance, his small gestures, the way he let me in without speaking, it all built a bond stronger than any words could express. By the time the evening ended, we were both a little exhausted, a little flushed, but infinitely closer. Each laugh, each scribbled note, each brush of skin against skin was another thread woven between us, making something fragile yet unbreakable. As I packed up my things, I scribbled one last note for the night and showed it to him. We're really good together. He looked at me, amber eyes lingering, then wrote back carefully.
Yes.
We are. And in that quiet library corner, surrounded by books and sunlight, I realized that Julian Hayes wasn't just my crush, my playful mystery, or my teasing partner in crime. He was becoming someone I truly trusted, someone I cared for more than I'd ever expected.